Hello, and welcome to Legalize. I'm Shannon Gunn Emery, one of the lawyers with Gun Law Group in Edmonton, Alberta. Today's topic is how to choose the right lawyer for your file and how to hopefully get them to choose you as their client. When that moment in your life happens where you realize you need a lawyer, sometimes just starting to try to find the right lawyer can be overwhelming. It is not easy. There are a ton of lawyers out there. So how do you sift between all of them? Well, here are some ideas to keep in mind. First, one of your best resources is right at your fingertips. And no, I'm not talking about your keyboard. I'm talking about your family and friends. Yes, talk to them about what's going on in your life, and you may be surprised to find that they either have been through a similar situation before or they know someone who just hired a lawyer and was very happy with them. The downside, of course, is that they are family and friends, and sometimes the reason why you need a lawyer is a very private one, and you don't want to share that with family and friends. In fact, they're the last ones you want to have knowing about your need for a lawyer. If that's your situation, keep listening, because I have other ideas. Next, Canly. Now, if you've listened to Legalize before, you know Canly is your friend. Here, we're going to be using the resource in another way. I used Canly once to find a family law lawyer in the Northwest Territories who could handle a file for a client where there were particular issues arising that I felt would be best handled by a local lawyer. I found someone. The way I did that, went on to Canly, went to the Supreme Court, Northwest Territories, and typed in a few search terms like spousal support, property division, and just explored to see what was out there. I saw one case where, when I was reading it, I thought, I think that lawyer had a very creative argument. I looked online, found the lawyer, called them up, had a great discussion, and we started working together towards his taking over the file. You can do the same. Go to Canly, do a little refresher on how to do a search, put in the terms that you're looking for, and see what's out there. Or work in reverse. If you've got a lawyer in mind, type in their name and see what comes up. How many cases have they done in that particular area? What kind of success have they had? Do keep in mind, though, that only a fraction of the cases heard by the courts actually end up being reported. Often, a judge may just give their decision from the bench. And so, then what do you do? Keep listening. Another useful tool for figuring out who's going to be the best lawyer for you is to look at that lawyer's website. If they don't have a website, keep looking, because frankly, a website is very basic. I know there are some lawyers who are out there who are not tech savvy. And okay, not everyone needs their own podcast, but you at minimum need a website. So look at their biographical information. Do they have training above and beyond what they needed to just get to be a lawyer? Do they have specialized courses on the topic that you're looking for? Or is the firm generally known for the area of law where you need help? I have to say, when I started in family law, I had a client who called me, and it was one of my first, and I was very excited, and I asked her, how did she find me? And she said, I was looking on your website. And I thought, that's strange, because at that point, I wasn't even advertising for family law. All it said was that I did criminal law and constitutional law, and that was about it. I will always be grateful to that client for choosing me, but today we're going to talk about better ways of choosing your lawyer. As a general rule, you don't want to choose a real estate lawyer for your criminal file. You don't want to choose a family law lawyer for your civil litigation file. At the same time, if you've worked with a particular lawyer in the past and you loved them, check to see if they would represent you on your new legal issue that's arisen. Lawyers are ethically bound not to provide services in areas where they are not competent. So if you know a particular lawyer is very strong in one area, check to see what they say about representing you in another, even if it doesn't appear to be their main area of practice. If their answer is no, chances are they will give you a referral to a top-notch lawyer who will be able to help you. So if a lawyer that you're considering hiring does not appear to be generally known for that area of the law, it doesn't mean that you want to rule them out completely, but you do want to proceed with caution. Someone might be branching out into a new area of law, or they might be more junior, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But if that's the case, if it doesn't look like the lawyer you're interested in has that particular background, look at the firm generally. Next, ask a lawyer who doesn't practice in the area that you're looking for. Ask the real estate lawyer, what criminal defense firm would they recommend? Ask your corporate civil guy for a reference for a family law file. Ask your wills and estates person if they know of someone who could help you with your land deal. Lawyers know lawyers. The legal community is not enormous. Lawyers know who to go to. So, for example, and for the record, no one is paying me to say this, if I were looking for a police brutality case, I would go to Tom Engel. If I were looking for a firearms case, I would go to Ian Runkle. If I needed someone on a child pornography case, Sean King, etc. Lawyers know other lawyers. Use them as resources. Maybe you have a friend who's a lawyer. Or if you don't, find one and make friends with him or her or them. This is only one of the good reasons why you should make friends with a lawyer. Lawyers are not always the most loved in our society, so go befriend a lawyer today. You'll find it's helpful for both of you. However, word of caution, looking for a lawyer to befriend is very different from looking for a lawyer to hire to represent you. The lawyer you hire is not going to be your friend. If you pick wisely, they will fight for you, they will care for you, but it's different from a friend. You want your lawyer to be smart and a strong, fearless advocate on your behalf. But you don't really have to like them. They may not even be all that likable. My ex-husband is a lawyer, and, of course, he's my ex-husband for a reason. Do I consider him always to be likable? No. But is he an excellent lawyer? Absolutely. Once you've sort of narrowed down your choices to a few, start interviewing some. Try them on for size. Is the lawyer pompous and arrogant? Some of them are, I hate to tell you. Do they use language that you can't understand, which is apparently employed to impress you? That's going to be irritating after a while. Do they seem approachable but with clear boundaries? How much information are they giving you on their first interview? Do a gut check. How comfortable do you feel with this person? Lawyers are unique. Each one's going to be different in how they approach a situation. My father used to say that every lawyer was like a painter and was trying to paint their own unique picture of the same scene. No two lawyers will present a case in exactly the same way, and some are, in my opinion, not exactly Rembrandts. Next tip, you can do a Google search. Now, there you will get a couple of things. There may be news reports about cases that they handled. There may also be a rate your lawyer type site. I would treat those with caution. Generally, we get mainly disgruntled people who come out of that, but it might be worth taking a look at. Of course, there are the ubiquitous Google reviews. Now, those can be hit and miss. For example, I have an axe to grind with Google. I have tried and tried to get a negative review taken off because we didn't represent that client. We had nothing to do with the file. It was a review by someone who had hired a lawyer who was sharing office space with us, but it was a completely different firm. It's very frustrating that the 0 or 1 star that they gave us continues to be posted. Clients who lose their file, even though a lawyer may have done the best they could have done for them, will sometimes vent their frustration by leaving a negative review. So one should be cautious about just accepting a negative review. And you have to realize, too, if lawyers are careful in how they respond, they are limited in their response. Everything that happens between a lawyer and a client is privileged. So if a client, for example, goes online and says things that aren't true, it is very, very difficult for us to defend ourselves because we can't say what is true if, in doing so, we would be breaching privilege. We are left with having to say things like, this is our general practice. This is what we would normally do. But whatever our response, we can't ever break solicitor-client privilege. When you're looking for your lawyer as well, often people used to look locally. They would look at who is the best lawyer for divorce in Spruce Grove, or the best lawyer in Saskatoon for impaired driving. But I would respectfully suggest that you are kind of limiting yourself there unnecessarily. Most lawyers will travel. Keep in mind, some areas of law permit travel better than others. The criminal code is a federal statute, and so it travels very well. It should be pretty uniform from place to place in Canada. Now, because of the decriminalization of impaired driving, where BC and Alberta have chosen to cherry-pick some parts of the criminal code that they are no longer going to prosecute, what may be a criminal code offense in one jurisdiction in Canada may only be an administrative infraction in another. It may not be always federal across the board, but for now it kind of is. So if you are looking for a criminal defense lawyer, rather than looking locally at who is the best lawyer for fill in your crime in your area, look at who is the best in general and will they go to where you are. Family law, real estate, everything else is a little trickier, so be careful. Now sometimes, let's face it, you're not necessarily looking for the best, because the best comes with a hefty price tag. Sometimes you're looking for good or up and coming. Up and coming is wonderful because the up and comings are at a lower price point but have a lot of potential. Good brain power. After all, the best lawyers out there were once among the up and coming. So when you're looking at lawyers, one aspect is to look at seniority. And here we are looking more at the individual lawyer rather than the law firm. Now, when you start to look for your lawyer, you may have already discounted a whole bunch of options. You may say, can't afford any senior lawyers, I'm only looking at the junior ones. Or, this is so important, forget about any junior lawyers, I'm going right to the top. Both of these ways of thinking are limiting. You don't want to limit yourself unnecessarily. You want to consider all your options. That's why you're listening to this podcast. Here is my passionate defense of junior lawyers. A junior lawyer can be great for a number of reasons. First, they fit your price point. Second, they can also come up with some very creative ideas. I remember once I ran a trial as a junior lawyer and I won, and I was very excited about it. I called my dad on the way back from court and told him all about it. My father was a seasoned criminal defense lawyer for whom I worked. He was my boss and my dad, so I had to tell him. I was so excited about the argument, how I ran it, how I won with it, and then my dad said, well, that's not a good argument. And I replied back, well, it clearly is, because I won with it. My father patiently explained that there was this case out there that said, no, you can't do it that way. And I said to him, well, I didn't know about that case. The Crown didn't know about it, and apparently the judge didn't know about it either, so I won. Sometimes junior lawyers can win just because they don't know that they shouldn't be able to. Junior lawyers also are often more accessible than the more senior lawyers. Their schedules are a little bit more free. So if, for example, you had been looking for a lawyer who is going to hold your hand a bit more and be comforting to you, well, my father would have been a horrible choice. He'd spend 15 minutes with you tops and tell you what the argument was and how he was going to run it, and then that was the end of that. Of course, my dad was in big demand. Saturday mornings, they were lined up out the door. No one was lining up the door for me. Although I'm not sure that the fact that he was a senior lawyer fully explains his lack of a nicer bedside manner. I got the distinct impression he was like that all the time. Luckily, he had junior counsel, me, and many others who were much more patient and could take a lot more time with the clients. Junior lawyers have a bit more time, which means they can respond to you a bit better, and they will put a lot of work into your file. They may also be trying to prove themselves, have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, so they will go above and beyond to try to make a name for themselves by winning your case. Finally, consider the complexity of your matter. Is it fairly simple? Are you looking for a will, personal directive, and power of attorney where there are no complicating factors? Or are you expecting this to be a battle of the experts in civil litigation that is likely going to span decades? When I interview a client and I realize that a junior lawyer could handle the file, I will often remind the client, you don't go to the neurosurgeon with a head cold. So if you don't need the most experienced lawyer, I don't know why you would pay for them. All of those are good reasons not to discount too quickly the junior lawyer. That said, when I was going through my own divorce, I lawyered up. Lawyers understand the value of lawyers. Yep, I went straight to the top. There are good reasons why you may wish to spend more for that senior lawyer than for a junior one. You get a junior lawyer in an isolated setting like a courtroom or a negotiation meeting, and all of a sudden, their lack of experience may become apparent. The more seasoned lawyer may be able to pivot and shift very quickly as the evidence in the case evolves, whereas the more junior lawyer may stick with the planned script and not see the golden opportunity when it presents itself. The more experienced lawyer will be listening and will be watching with a different set of legal eyes than the more inexperienced lawyer. They'll pick up on arguments that the other one just couldn't see because of a lack of experience. I hate to say it, but this happened to me when I was just starting out. I remember once running a trial, losing, and then about 3 months later, coming across a case that likely would have resulted in a win for the client. I felt really bad. But I had to forgive myself and keep going. And after all, that client could have chosen a more senior lawyer. They knew there was a bit of a risk going with a more junior lawyer. And what can I say? That client was part of my learning experience. An experienced lawyer may also come with a reputation that may rattle witnesses right off the bat. That can be very helpful. It's rather nice as senior counsel to walk into the courtroom and have the Crown go, I give up, before we even start. I remember one Crown prosecutor who must have been having a bad day that day, and when I walked in, she looked at me and she said, "Oh no, I am not doing this with you today. How about this?" And whatever it was lovely. Be cautious because even a very experienced lawyer may not have the experience you need in the area you're looking for. I was a prime example. Luckily for clients, I was very above board about my lack of experience in family law when I started back in 2017. By then, I was already a seasoned lawyer, but not in family law. I used to say I was the most senior junior lawyer out there. You can be 15 years at the bar, but if you always did administrative law, and now you're branching out for the first time into criminal law, clients may want to pause and reflect a bit to decide whether or not you really would be the best choice. On the other hand, when you've been in law for that long, sometimes you need to shake up your practice a bit. You don't want to become complacent. The seasoned lawyer who has a more varied practice would be able to respond to issues where they intersect with other areas of law, rather than a lawyer who has focused their practice so narrowly as to become a one-trick pony. Criminal law, family law, and immigration law often intersect at many levels. Family law in particular often resembles an octopus with a multitude of tentacles going off in all directions, tax and insurance and wills and estates and real estate. The more seasoned lawyer will not necessarily know everything about all those areas, but they will know how to find the answers. Next stop on the journey towards picking a lawyer, advertising. When you are looking at the websites or looking at advertising put out by lawyers, keep in mind Law Society rules. I ask you to keep them in mind because some lawyers don't, and the lawyers who do are often at a disadvantage. Here's what the Law Society's website says. Lawyers are not allowed to advertise that they are specialists or experts in Alberta and should avoid use of derivative words such as specialize or expertise in their marketing. Alberta lawyers can identify their preferred practice areas in their advertising. This serves the fundamental purpose of assisting clients to identify a lawyer who may provide the service they need. Well, maybe if the client understands all these rules, but often they don't. And so, unfortunately, may be swayed by the law firm that purports to specialize when others don't, not knowing that in doing so, the law firm is really advertising that they don't care about following the ethical rules set out by the Law Society, which is something that clients might want to think about. Sometimes clients will choose their lawyer, at least in part, based on their gender, male or female. I know that may sound surprising to you, but sometimes they do. Sometimes male clients want a female lawyer for a spousal abuse case or a sexual assault file. It's really difficult to say whether that makes an appreciable difference or not. But sometimes it might. I feel like a woman knows very well how to get under another woman's skin. I remember certain cross-examinations where I kind of used my woman's intuition on how to really drive that witness crazy. And I think it worked very well. Once that witness is irritated or has lost control of their temper, you can get very interesting answers. Maybe a man could do that just as well, but I don't know. Gender can also come into play when your own gender is fluid or non-traditional. If you're a member of the LGBTQ community, you may wish to look to see if the law firm is clear on its wish to be sensitive to your particular needs. Please be aware, that does not mean they won't make mistakes. They could still misgender you. They could still make inappropriate comments, but hopefully, if they actually state that they are catering to the LGBTQ community, they're making an effort and they're trying. How big is the law firm? If you're going with a sole practitioner, that can have a few disadvantages. When that person is gone, they're gone. Maybe ask questions about what happens when they're on vacation or what happens when they're sick. The other disadvantage with that is you only have one set of fees to choose from. In a firm with a few other lawyers, don't be shy about asking what the other lawyers in the firm charge or whether they could handle your file. The better firms would offer you options before you even ask. Finally, one of my favorite issues is language. If you speak Chinese, Spanish, Ukrainian, etc., you can certainly ask for an interpreter to be present. You would want those interpreters to be present at your meetings with the lawyers too. However, if you speak one of the official languages, and it is not the language of the majority where you are being tried for a criminal matter and now potentially a family law matter, you should be looking for a lawyer who speaks those languages. Ideally, you're looking for a lawyer who is bilingual because of the sidebar comments that could happen in court. Lawyers have an ethical duty to ensure that you know about your rights under Section 530 of the Criminal Code and your blossoming rights under the Divorce Act. Now, it's time to turn our legal eyes to the flip side of that coin. You've chosen the lawyer. You are pretty sure you've made a good decision. You did all your research. But how do you get them to choose you? How can you make your case look attractive to the lawyer so that they take it on? This question may surprise you. You may think, well, if I've chosen the lawyer, obviously they're going to take my file. Maybe not. Lawyers can say no. and it would be helpful for clients to know what makes you stand out as a possible good client. Here are some of my tips on how to make your case look attractive to a lawyer so they want to take it. First, don't open with, "You want a pro bono lawyer." All the lawyer hears when they hear that is this is going to be a lot of work for no pay. Now, don't get me wrong. You can get a lawyer to take your case pro bono, but it's not going to be just on the basis of the fact that you have no money. I mean, think about it. That doesn't make you stand out. There are lots of people who don't have money. No, you have to make it interesting. There has to be some reward in it, beyond just that good feeling that the lawyer should have in doing pro bono. See if you can show them why this case is important. In criminal law, for example, are there some big issues in your file that perhaps have not been completely explored? Are you dealing with a new regime like the IRS, immediate roadside sanction, i.e. impaired driving regime? Or can you show some significant unfairness? Lawyers got into law because they care about fairness. If the lawyer starts to think that you maybe got the short end of the stick in some way, in some legal way, they may be more willing to help you. So rather than opening with, "I'm looking for a pro bono lawyer," open with, "I haven't seen my kids in a year." Oh my heavens! Lawyers love a good story. "I got charged for impaired driving, but I was riding an electric bike. And I was pedaling." Ooh, fun. Next tip. Keep your recitation of the issues short. And by that I mean maybe a paragraph or a paragraph and a half if you're sending a message by email. As soon as I see a book, I don't want to become involved. Really. All of a sudden I have it in my head that it's going to be half hour to an hour every time I speak to you. Well, now there's a red flag up. Worse yet, you may be the ubiquitous vexatious litigant that scares the pants off the Court of King's Bench. I hate to tell you, vexatious litigant, but lawyers don't like you either. Freemen on the land, anarchists, you know who you are. Most lawyers just do not have time for that. Find that fine line between being a pest and advocating for your case. You might not get a call back the first time you send a message. Often lawyers are busy. But let them know you were looking for a particular lawyer and why you were looking for them. Not only will they be flattered, they'll know that you did a little bit of research. It makes you sound more like a serious client. Another tip. If you tick off the staff, it is highly unlikely I would take on your file. If my case manager Daryl hates you, you likely won't be working with the firm for very long. If you are disrespectful, if you are rude or demanding, that does not augur well for the future. If, however, you show yourself to be reasonable, you start off by telling your story in a calm, reasonable, controlled manner that shows very clearly that you are not a psychopath, well, you have a much better chance of having that lawyer take your file. You're not using outrageous language, lots of swear words, and you don't sound super excitable. Hyperbole is not your best friend. Maybe we will want you as a client. See how easy it is? One of the quickest ways in family law to win a place in my heart is to say something nice about your future ex-spouse. "She's always been a great mom to our kids." Or, "He's a really good guy. It's just we don't get along anymore." I love that. That means to me that you are reasonable, you're keeping your dignity about you, and you will likely make a very good client. Here's my next suggestion. If you had a lawyer already, you may not realize it, but that is already a cautionary flag for the next lawyer listening to what you have to say. Be careful about how much you badmouth the other lawyer. For all you know, that might be a very reputable lawyer, and the lawyer that you're now trying to hire will have that in mind and start making black marks against you. When I tell a client that I may not be able to get to their file in X amount of days and they are patient, that makes me want to take their file. If you start out by saying you've already tried legal aid and were refused, you are again in a situation that is a lot like pro bono. you're going to have to sell that case harder to the lawyer. If you can appeal to their sense of justice, you might get somewhere. If you also keep an open mind and are willing to consider less expensive counsel that is within the same firm, that could work out well too. There's no point in you saying that you want the most expensive lawyer in the office for what appears to be a dog file and you can't pay anything. You're not likely to get good results that way. Once you have the lawyer you want, how do you keep them? You want to make sure that you know how to work with the lawyer that you've chosen. Here are a few ideas to make that relationship really work well. First, stay in contact. If things aren't going well or you have a question, make sure you ask. Communication is key. If you're behind on payments, don't drop off the face of the earth. Contact your lawyer and talk to them about it. Do your homework. When the lawyer asks you to get your financial disclosure together or to send in a statement or contact your probation officer or contact your counselor, please do it. The lawyer does not want to be your babysitter, and you don't want to have to spend extra just so that they can remind you of stuff you were supposed to do. If you don't follow through with the instructions that your counsel is giving you, they probably won't stay on the file too long. Next suggestion, keep your lawyer's assistant looped in at all times. This is a really big one. If you start sending really important emails and the assistant doesn't know about it, chances are that information is going to get lost. The lawyer's inbox is incredibly full. Believe me when I say that the lawyer's assistant cares about your file as much as the lawyer does. If you have a whole team working for you, use the whole team. Try not to send more than one email message a day. If this is a family law file or a civil file, don't forget, you're being charged every single time you email. Even if it's not, and it's something like a criminal file and the billing is on a flat fee basis, you're just going to irritate the lawyer if you send them 7 emails in a day. Of course, there can be emergencies and maybe you're corresponding with that lawyer all day that day. That's fine, but as a regular thing, best to be avoided. Some of you may be do-it-yourselfers and you're hoping to do part of this work on your own so that you don't have to pay the lawyer to do it. Have a very frank conversation with your lawyer about that. Even more importantly, have that conversation before you go out and do whatever it is you're thinking about. Maybe you can do something on your own. But do not just go ahead and do stuff and then surprise your lawyer with it later. They may not be too happy. Unfortunately, sometimes what you are doing is undermining what the lawyer is trying to do. So be careful before you try to save money and do stuff on your own without checking with the lawyer first. So don't start contacting the police or contacting the Crown or negotiating spousal support with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, because all of those could end up putting you in a sticky situation. And then you may have to pay more to your lawyer to get you out of it. Almost all of this boils down to trust and communication. Once you have a solid foundation and you know how to work with your lawyer and your lawyer is enjoying working with you, well, that's when the magic happens and your file starts to move in a very positive direction. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode has inspired you to go out and hire a lawyer. Or maybe it has given you a bit more confidence and understanding on how to work with the lawyer you already have and want to keep. I hope we'll be together for the next episode. It's going to be on experts. Lawyers are not experts in everything. If you ask the Law Society, lawyers are not experts in anything. But we know when to use them and how to use them. And I'll explain a little bit about why. See you next time. Shannon Gunn Emery signing off.